Now, what's the first rule of achieving your financial Juneteenth? Don't allow yourself to become a one-trick pony. Now, what does that mean? A one-trick pony is basically, in my opinion, a person who gets all their money from one source. You never want to get caught in that trap. You see, a lot of people, when they think about money, they're always thinking about the amount of money that they get. They're thinking about the level of their income. They almost never think about that second layer, which is the security of your income. Having a lot of money is fun, but the only thing worse than never having any money is to have a whole lot of money and suddenly lose it and have nothing to fall back on. When you talk about economic security, one thing that you have to understand is that there is no such thing as job security anymore. You can never have job security when you've only got one job. You can never have income security when you've only got one stream of income. My belief is that every black person in America should have their own business, even if you work for somebody else. And that's something you should teach your kids and teach your relatives and teach everybody that you know. You can start side hustles. There are many, many ways that you can add income security. And I would argue that if you are a person that is getting all their money from one source, you're probably putting yourself at risk unnecessarily of bad things happening. When you talk about the most recent recession, the recession that occurred in 2008, some of the people that were hit the hardest were actually members of the black elite. I'm talking about people that live in places like Prince George's County, where the income level is through the roof and everybody's balling, everybody's got a big house, everybody's got a nice car, everybody's living it up. Unfortunately, even though income was high, financial, I guess, windfall, if you want to call it that, was very high. Financial security and maybe financial literacy wasn't always as high as it needed to be. So if you have a person who's, say, a lawyer or a professor or a doctor, and they've went to school a long time, they make a lot of money, and they're living in a house they can barely afford, they've got a whole lot of debt, and they've got a car that costs a little bit more than they should be paying for it, unfortunately, in many of those cases, that person could literally be 1 or 2 paychecks away from being homeless. And if you look at the default rates across the country, you would see that some of the areas where the so-called black elite live actually had the highest default rates, because that's where you had the most people who were buying stuff that they really shouldn't be buying. They put themselves in positions where they were financially vulnerable. If you want to look more deeply into the concept I'm communicating to you, it's one that we teach regularly in finance classes, and it's called diversification. Now, diversification might be something you may have heard of. You've heard of words like diversity, I'm sure. Diversity meaning different, right? A diverse set of options, right? Well, diversification is just like that. Diversification basically says, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't be a one-trick pony. Your grandmother probably taught you that when you were little, especially if you grew up on a farm with chickens and eggs, right? We all understand that there's a risk when you put all of your security, your hopes and your dreams and your family's security in the hands of one person. And for African Americans, you're especially vulnerable because the person who holds that security might be part of an institution that is historically racist. You see, racism is, when I talk about racism, it's not really a matter of me saying, oh, well, white people are bad and white people want to hurt you. I'm not talking about that. What I'm really talking about is the fact that white people have power. And many of these institutions that were built that sustain us were not created with our needs in mind. And I'm really especially talking about black males. If you're raising a black boy, if you love a black man in your life, you have a black brother, a black father, a black man anywhere in your life, I would say that you should go look at some of the data in terms of what's happened to the black male due to the lack of economic security being provided by the current economic system. Most black men can't get jobs, and then when they do get the jobs, they are the last ones hired and the first ones fired. So if anybody should really understand the importance of financial security, it has to definitely start with the black male, especially for black men that are looking for ways to provide for their families, looking for ways to restore our pride and self-esteem. You see, you lose dignity when you're getting kicked around by the world, when you've been marginalized by the world, when you're mistreated by the world. It takes away your manhood. It zaps you of your mojo, so to speak. So I say that we want black men to get their mojo back. We don't want black men having to walk around with their head down. And what's unfortunate is that even when you have black men who have quote-unquote made it, who have the education, who've gotten into corporate America, there's still a degree of stress and frustration that might come from the fact that they feel economically vulnerable because they kind of feel that if you mess up one time, if you get out of line one time, if you say the wrong thing one time, you're going to be punished almost like you're a little kid. So to some extent that keeps us as almost like infants infants or children, in a grown man's world.